Now, the Judicial Services Commission will begin interviews tomorrow for the next Chief Justice and several vacancies in the Supreme Court of Appeal. Justice Mandisa Maya is the sole candidate, replacing Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, whose 12-year term comes to an end in August. She's already been endorsed by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's discuss this matter with Judges Matter researcher now, Mbekezeli Benjamin. Mbekezeli, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. How significant are these interviews taking place over the next 2 days, especially as the country is at that crucial point heading to the elections?
Good evening, Mr. Mbekezeli, and good evening to the viewers. The interviews this week are really significant, particularly those tomorrow on Monday, where they'll be interviewing candidates to fill vacancies at the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now, the Supreme Court of Appeal is the second highest court in the country. It deals with most appeals that come from the high courts. And so it sort of is in charge of developing the law. And for a number of years, a lot of its judges have either retired or been promoted. And so it does have a bit of an experience gap. And so it needs more judges to come on. And that is what the JSC will be busy with on Monday, where it will be interviewing 10 candidates. So on Tuesday, of course, yes, on Tuesday is when the JSC will be interviewing the Deputy President of the SCA, but also the Chief Justice. That's where Justice Maya will come on and will be questioned by the JSC on her plans and vision for the judiciary, because if she is appointed, she will serve for the next 10 years. And so the interviews this week will really determine the future of the judiciary for the next decade. Why is that important, that Tuesday in particular, when President Ramaphosa has already stuck to the tradition and nominated only one judge for that position? Yes, so this time around, the interview is a little bit different. In 2022, there were 4 candidates, and so there was a bit of a competition. Each one of them was trying to showcase their skills and why they should be Chief Justice. Now there's only one candidate, and so the role of the JSC becomes even more central, because they now have to interrogate and question Justice Maya on the plans to deal with the challenges that the judiciary is facing. For example, one of the big things that came out of the Judges Conference in December was this idea of moving the administration of the courts from the Ministry of Justice and the Department of Justice to the judges themselves. And so it falls on Justice Maya to implement that resolution of the Judges Conference. The question is, how will she do it? We need to hear that on Tuesday. There's also fixing the JSC. There's still some problems with the JSC. She needs to speak about how she will fix that. She was working on a policy that will deal with sexual harassment in the courts. So we also need to hear an update on how far she is in developing that policy and what plans she has to implement that policy. So there are a number of things that she needs to speak about on Tuesday. It's not simply a normal run-of-the-mill job interview. But one would say, is it not a mere box-ticking exercise, because the JSC already found her suitable? In fact, previously they had recommended her to the president, who did not take that advice at the time. Yes, you're quite right. In 2022, she was recommended by the JSC and they advised the president to appoint her. But 2022 does feel like a long time ago when you consider that in the last 18 months alone, when she's been at the Constitutional Court, she's written a number of judgments. She's recently had to preside over quite an important case that had to deal with the MK versus IAC, and how she handled that case has attracted some criticism. So we want to hear what has happened over the last 2 years. Is she still ready to be Chief Justice, and what plans does she have to carry out the role? So it is still quite important. So, I mean, what would we have picked up from her handling of that particular matter, the IAC versus Umkhonto we Sizwe hearing? Well, look, that hearing drew a lot of public attention. There was a lot of pressure, I suppose, because it comes so close to the election and has to deal with issues relating to the election. There was some criticism from the leader of Rise Mzansi, actually, who wrote a column last week to say that the way that she handled that hearing by allowing some of the lawyers to speak much more than the allocated time, that was not fair on the other lawyers, but it also undermines the rules and directives of the JSC of the Constitutional Court as an institution. So the criticism was in how she couldn't enforce the rules of the Constitutional Court, and that is something that she should have done as the presiding judge at that hearing.
It's not only criticism, but it's also some praise, I suppose, of work that she has done since her appointment as a Deputy Chief Justice in 2022. What is the ground that has been covered?
Well, there are a couple of things that she's been able to do. The Judicial Conduct Committee, which is the subcommittee of the JSC that receives and adjudicates complaint, it has been working a little bit more efficient than it did in the past. We know that she's prepared a report on the activities of the Judicial Conduct Committee, which is something that hasn't happened in the last 10 years. And so that for us is a positive sign that she's getting things done. Also, I spoke of the sexual harassment policy. It took a while for it to be developed, but we understand that it is in the final stages of finalization, and it should be released quite soon. So that is something that she can claim as a credit to her. But also, we just heard today that tomorrow will be the hand down of that MK versus IEC judgment. It took 9 days, which I think is a new record for the Constitutional Court, which has been criticized for taking far too long to deliver judgments.
Do you anticipate, as judges matter, it being an election year and so close to the election that a lot of the politics might want to creep in, at least in the interviews in the next 2 days?
Well, we hope that none of the interviews, none of the politics of the elections filter into the interviews. We hope that the commissioners will resist the temptation to politicize that space. The JSC over the last couple of months has actually been doing really good. They have been following their own criteria. They have been respectful of the candidates. They have been focused on the task of finding the very best judges to be in our courts. And so we hope that they will maintain that spirit and resist the silly season fever that comes in with the elections.
Mbekezeli Benjamin, as always, much appreciated, and thank you for your intervention tonight. Senior researcher at Judges Matter there. That's Mbekezeli Benjamin.